Good morning, everyone. Before starting with the speakers of today, we're going to have the welcome address by Ana Del Bianco, Central Director for Culture and Sport of the Autonomous Region of Friuli Venezia Giulia, and Nicoletta Remeo, Artistic Director of the Trieste Film Festival. Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm going to speak Italian to be faster. And to be more precise, thank you very much to all of you for being here, and thank you very much to the organizers. This is the third year that the organizers have organized a panel for an exchange between the different capitals of culture. So welcome on behalf of the regional administration and of the Vice President and Culture and Counselor for Culture and Sport, Mario Anvil, and the Central Directorate for Culture and Sport, which is supporting the European Capital of Culture, and for many years has been collaborating with Alpe Adria Film Festival. This third edition of the panel is focusing on the topic of multilingualism and the opportunities given to cities and countries hosting the European Capitals of Culture. It's going to be very interesting to listen to the speakers, especially to build up the future of Nova Gorica, our European Capital of Culture. 2025 is a year of fireworks for us, but we believe that the real challenge of the European Capital of Culture is yet to come in the future. It will be interesting to listen to you to understand how to make our capital grow, how communities will be able to increasingly integrate while enhancing their identities by knowing other people's identities. We believe this is a fundamental point. The people, just like myself, who live on a border know very well that a language can be an even stronger barrier than physical barriers, because language has an impact on the ability to communicate and the ability to fully understand who is on the other side of the border. However, living in areas where it is quite common to listen to different languages and different sounds make us grow aware that cities and countries have different stories, traditions, customs. And this arouses curiosity and nourishes imagination and make us go beyond what we consider normal. There are similar sounds in different languages. There are words recalling words in other languages with the same meaning. This means going back to our history and roots and families. This is something I was doing when I was young. I was listening to sounds that were very similar. And this is how, in border areas, you can immediately understand how to get to know the others and go beyond divisions. Nova Gorica and Gorica have taken on the challenge, the historical and language barrier, to build up a new European city where differences are an asset, and all the different forms of art and expression lay the basis for developing rich communities, cultural rich communities that are open to change. These results also are due to the fact that communities will be able not to cancel their identities and languages, but will be able to share them with others, building together their common history. Thank you very much once again to all the speakers for contributing to today's roundtable. Friuli Venezia Giulia will continue to support this dialogue between the capitals of culture because we believe that networking among institutions is the best way forward and the faster way to build up a common development objectives. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers. This is a very important and interesting exchange, and I hope that this panel will continue over the years. Yesterday, while I was writing this speech, I was wondering, God knows whether we'll still be here in 5 or 6 years' time. So thank you very much. I wish you fruitful proceedings for this morning. Thank you, Anna. Welcome to the 36th edition of the Trieste Film Festival.
Gorizia and Gorizia as a European Capital of Culture 2025. The Trieste Film Festival has organized for the third consecutive year a roundtable discussion connected to the event calendar, which will place Nova Gorizia and Gorizia at the very center of the cultural life of the Friuli Venezia Giulia region and beyond. In previous editions, the roundtable explored topics such as territorial film development as both a socioeconomic and cultural driver, and the accessibility and sustainability of cultural events within other European capitals of culture. Representatives from these capitals came to Trieste in 2023 and in 2024 from various countries to exchange best practices, reflect on the themes discussed, and bring their own fantastic experiences. This year, as Anna mentioned, the dialogue continues with other European cities focusing on bilingualism or even multilingualism, a topic I care a great deal about. And it seems to me particularly useful and interesting to understand how the European Capital of Culture initiative has helped or will help strengthen and unite linguistic communities within the same area, while identifying good practices and that have been introduced or are still in place. This year in Trieste, representatives from the following European capitals of culture will be present: Esch-sur-Alzette, Plovdiv, Timișoara, Nova Gorica, Gorizia, of course. The representatives of these capitals will share their experiences as multilingual and often border cities, focusing on practices related to the multilingual communication of cultural events, strengthening the multi-identity value of a region, and promoting inclusivity for ethnic, linguistic, and cultural minorities, especially in our region. We know, what it is. The Trieste Film Festival has always been a very open, democratic cultural space, fostering exchanges of ideas, debate on current themes, cultural and historical topics, where cinema and the arts are intended for all and everyone. Indeed, an open, inclusive, stimulating, and curious space. So we wish the European Capital of Culture to broaden our horizons and become a model of a cross-border communication and exchanges, especially for the new generations. So thank you once again for accepting our invitation, and I look forward to listening to you today. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Michaela Passon in charge of the Eject Go project 2025 Nova Gorica Gorizia, European Capital of Culture. Please go. You have the floor.
La sua relazione Go 2025, Bilingualism and the Opportunities of the European Capital of Culture, Go 2025, Bilinguismo e opportunità della capitale europea della cultura. Prego.
Okay, good morning. First of all, I would like to present myself. I'm Micaela Passon, as mentioned before, and I am here today representing the European Capital of Culture, but specifically the AGTC Go. I'm working at the AGTC Go. The AGTC Go is the European Grouping of Territorial Cooperation and is one of the two entities that is right now working on the program of the European Capital of Culture in the implementation of the European Capital of Culture. We are working on the territory of Nova Gorizia, Gorizia, and Szentpéter-Wertőiba. That is our third municipality. And actually since the 2011. So we were one of the entities that were really already in the beginning involved in the whole program of the European Capital of Culture. And I don't know, I will just speak, tell something about our territory. Okay, good. Good. So I would like, first of all, to present to you a little bit our territory for those who do not know us. Basically, we are on the border, and we our AGTC actually works on the border because of the border, you know, just to promote really the cross-border cooperation between Italy and Slovenia. In our staff, we are bilingual. I think that more than half of our staff is bilingual. We speak Italian, Slovenian. Some of my colleagues are Slovenian citizens, some other are Italians, but and some other are actually from the Slovenian minority that lives in Italy. And just a small introduction. I don't know if you know, we have the Gorizia, that is like the old part of the town, and on the other side of the border we have Nova Gorica, that is the new Gorizia, translated in English. So that means that this city was created after the Second World War, when the border was created between on our territory, and some houses actually remains without a city center that was before Gorizia for them, and Yugoslav state decided to create this new city to give to their citizens a new city center, and obviously to show also their strength and their power to the citizens, but to the whole world. And so this is kind of, yes, an introduction to better understand that actually our territory was really a crossroad of different populations. We were really, historically, we were dominated by different rulers, dominations, and we were always really a mixed population. We were on the crossroad of the Latin, the Slavic culture, the Germanic culture, so so the East, the Balkans, so really a mixture of everything. And this is kind of interesting because it's really a particular thing. And after, obviously, with European Union, but also before, so after the wars and stuff, obviously they decided to that is important to, in a way, support the minorities that remains in one state or in the other state. And so we have right now different laws that gives us the right to speak in our language, to have schools in our language. So, for example, Slovenian minority on the Italian side has some schools that has the Slovenian-speaking language as like the main language of the school. And we have a lot of associations, so the Slovenian minority is kind of structured minority, and it's really active on the territory. On the other hand, on the Slovenian side, we have also some Italian minority, but is more based on the coast area, so Koper, Capodistria, that area. And in Nova Gorica, we do not have actually a strong Italian minority. And so this is also why we do not have like a specific regulation that regulates the Italian speaking, the use of Italian on the Slovenian side. And this is also why we have like the signs, the road signs, for example, on the road in Italy that are bilingual, so Italian, Slovenian, and sometimes also trilingual, so we have also the Friulian. But in Slovenia, we have just in Slovenia because there is the national law that it's based on the fact that you have to have all the sign on the roads just in the local language. And so this is kind of a particularity, but yeah, I think that's also interesting. And well, what can I say more about our territory? Maybe probably something about the European Capital of Culture. So the European Capital of Culture was won actually by Nova Gorica, so by the Slovenian city, the Slovenian part. And the Gorica decided to collaborate with the Slovenian city in order to show, actually, I think, the cooperation, the strong cooperation between the two cities and the really strong connections because, yeah, the two cities are really close. So if you are walking around the Gorica and Nova Gorica and you not know exactly where the border is, you may also not notice the border. Well, right now, I probably yes, because we have the policeman on the border again, but normally you won't probably notice the border. So from an urbanistical point of view, for example. So it's they decided really to collaborate on that. And what is, I think, important is that obviously the Slovenian is the main language of the European Capital of Culture, but to that was added also the Italian language, obviously, and at the same time also the third language, so the English language, as lingua franca, you know, to understand each other. And so all the communication of the European Capital of Culture right now is really trilingual. And obviously, this has maybe some complications because some of us are speaking both languages. So, okay, this really helps sometimes, but sometimes others do not speak all the languages. So maybe it's just Slovenian, maybe just Italian, or a little bit of English. So we are really trying to communicate to each other in different ways. But yeah, I think that the most important thing is that if you really want something, you really want to collaborate and do stuff together, then you can understand each other in a way or in another way. So. Important is actually, and it should be underlined that, as I told you before, all of our communication is trilingual, and also our main platform on which we we post everything, all the events and all the projects information that will be organized during the 2025 year are trilingual. And this is, I think, kind of a particularity because in other European Capital of Culture, mostly the platforms were in their local language, and then some parts were translated in the English language for the tourists and stuff. And, well, this. And what else? I think that, yeah, well, I can tell something more about the projects, maybe.
Sure.
Okay. So basically, we do not have a specific project that is of the official program that is based on the multilingualism, because everything is already multilingual. But we are having different projects that are transversal and that are based on also non-verbal languages. So we have music, dance, and other non-verbal languages that can be understood by all, obviously, even if you do not speak the local language. And but we, as the AGTC Go, have this small project fund called, so we are financing additionally to other, to the main program of the European Capital of Culture, other small projects on the territory that are supporting the European Capital of Culture. And we published a call this year that has the multilingualism as one of the main thematics to be addressed by these small projects on the territory. And so we are really trying to underline this aspect of our territory and to support it. And we are right now having, I think, kind of 4 projects that are working on that. We have, for example, a project that will organize during this year a festival of minority languages. So it will be really interesting for our territory. We have another project that is trying to, in a funny way, to learn how to speak the other language. So they are like creating these small games and small apps on which you can like learn in a funny way the other language, and also yeah, the local language, like the dialect, not just the formal language, but also some dialects way of saying. And then we have another project that is cross-culture, that also is a kind of collaboration between different associations that are working on the territory. So this is really a really important thing, a nice thing that in our small project we can really see the involvement of the different people on the territory, on the smaller association on the territory. And they are collaborating, actually, associations between the Slovenian associations, associations of Slovenian minority, and also of the Friulian association. So it's really, really interesting. And they are really having a lot of events, cultural events, readings in all the 3 languages, actually. So it's really nice. And well, I think that that's it for the projects really based on the multilingualism. But obviously, a dream of the ECOC team would be this the thing that everybody understand each other. So we are really trying to promote this, as we call it, passive multilingualism. So at least that the people that are from the territory, that are not speaking all the languages present on the territory, because obviously the languages are different, are from a different, really, one is Latin language, the other one is Slavic language, so it's kind of difficult to learn but that at least they would understand each other. So we are really trying to promote this multilingualism, like in the writings, in the road signs, for example, in different signs, that the people would at least read once and say, like a writing, sorry, in both languages, and they would understand that that word means that thing. So maybe the second time they would read again that, they will remember that, and that the third time, when they will hear this word, they will say, ah, okay, so yeah, I know what this means. And this is really a thing that we are trying to work on to promote this passive multilingualism in a way. I think that's it.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you to all the staff. So fruitful proceedings and good luck for this upcoming year. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll start with Plodviv. So I will call next to me Gina Kafejan, Deputy Director of the Programming Plovdiv, European Capital of Culture. Plodviv 2019 is a multi-genre, multilingual, and multicultural ecosystem. This is the title of her presentation.
When you said the title now, I'm thinking, as all ecosystems, it's extremely fragile, so we have to take care. And when you presented in the morning, at the start of our session, that these are the best practices, I think some of our best practices can after that be features and result as worst practices, because we couldn't take the best, all potential out of them. And to have a discussion on worst practices is also something very, very good. It's an absolute honor to be here today and to be able to discuss with you on these important topics, and especially in the context of the selection of the festival films that we so far you were generous to share with us, and we were so lucky to see, and also with the coming program, because what is important, what makes sense, what brings common sense is the multiness in our lives. And the project European Capital of Culture develops in identical as the selection of the festival amniotic fluids. As a concept, as a programming, every project in the European Capital of Culture program, and there are tons, big, small, they all aim to have the string of multi-genre, multilingual, multiculturalness. In Plovdiv, in particular, the concept and the program was under the motto "Together." And in it, we used music, dance, photography, theater, opera, film, sculpture, darkness, light, touch, vibration, virtual perception, all those as the multi-languages, as the possibility to find the grounds to communicate and understand each other, and to know what we are facing, what's important to protect, what's important to caress, especially in the context of today's inauguration in non-European Union country. Plovdiv, in general, to give you the context, is the second largest city in the country, famous for its cultural heritage. It is the oldest continuously inhabited city in Europe, 8,000-year history. It became the first city in modern-day Bulgaria to host the title European Capital of Culture. The next one is in 2032. And thus became also the first city in the history of the European Capital of Culture that used the Cyrillic alphabet. The marvel of this project, European Capital of Culture, is that it did not celebrate all what's given, but that it celebrates all that was and still is, and not only in Bulgaria, at stake. And what is at stake is our multi-ness. The program, which you see snippets of during my presentation, was organized and still is, because we have a beautiful legacy program, in 4 thematic platforms. They were Fuse, Transform, Revive, and Relax. And the basic meaning and the key to understand those words, again, was the motto together. It's clear, it's universal, and in the same time, when we still say the other language and not our languages, the other ethnicity and not our ethnicities, it makes sense to point out that we need the togetherness. Plovdiv used this symbol and motto also because in 1885, this was the city where Bulgaria was unified. But from what we see now as our election results and our tendencies in the majority of the population, the unification is not necessarily a given. It's a constant, continuous choice that we should make. So of those 4 platforms, the one that's most hosted the projects dedicated to communities, languages, is the one called Fuse, and in it there is the cluster Mahala. This cluster Mahala uses a Turkish word to present our multicultural background and reality in Plovdiv. According to the 2021 census, Bulgaria, as a language, is the mother tongue of 85% of our population. Around 9% has decided to present Turkish as their mother tongue, and only 4% Romani as mother tongue. And according to the constitution of Bulgaria, every mother tongue could be freely spoken, of course, in the family, but if it manages to pass some legislation, it can also be taught in schools. So we have Armenian schools, we have schools with focus on Turkish language, but an important sentence which is giving some uncomfortable feeling is, quote, "Citizens are free to communicate with each other in any languages without using them as a demonstration against Bulgarian culture and national identity." So how much our multilingual understanding of ourselves allow us to identify as Bulgarians, it's still a very contradictory platform to work through artistic and political program and projects. The project cluster, registering the biggest interest on behalf of the international organizations, was again only the Fuse program, and we were lucky to have the most big part of international partners coming to help our society and our artists open to the diversity of and the richness of our population. What you are seeing at the moment is one of our flagship projects in the Mahala cluster, and it was based on a very well known plot, the drama of Euripides, Medea, presented and seeking a modern interpretation of the right to live, to have a life, to process the choices, the nature of love, and the power of vengeance. Well, together with the focus on art, the project carries a strong social dimension through the collaboration of established professionals from the world of theater and children from various ethnicities in Plovdiv: Roma, Turkish, Jewish, Armenian, and Bulgarian. And of course, the university students, interns, activists, they all work together in order to have a long process of understanding, presenting, breaking some of the very sensible but very present borders. So for example, some of those kids which you see here on the stage of the ancient theater in Plovdiv presenting in front of audience of 5,000 people, left their neighborhood for the first time in order to participate in some of the education, rehearsals, workshops, and then to present this performance. Luckily, as part of the legacy of European Capital of Culture, this project continues, and actually in 2020 it gained the European Citizen Award for great achievements. And the Beauty and the Beast, with the Beast, is another part of our multilingual feature, which aimed to present the Cyrillic alphabet. The highlighting of the diversity in the different European countries, the project was mostly aligned with the European dimension. Being the first European capital of culture to use the Cyrillic alphabet, we wanted to present the Bulgarian font of Cyrillic. So we use the Koch initiative as a platform for popularization and official introduction and adaptation of the Bulgarian fonts, as well as the transformation of urban environment by applying the tools of design. Another highlight in the same project was what you see at the moment. This is the Plovdiv handwriting, a project that collected and analyzed 4,000 samples of handwriting. Those mainly were either Plovdivians or guests of the city who can use Cyrillic alphabet. So it was not very much inclusive for our expats communities or the international citizens who still do face some difficulties using the Cyrillic alphabet. But as part of the project, 7 different fonts were created. Of them, 2 are very specific because they use pictograms and the presentation of specific identities of Plovdiv, and also some funny slang that Plovdiv can be recognized. When you hear someone speaking, you recognize that he's from Plovdiv or she is from Plovdiv, and that was presented as part of the fonts. If you are challenging yourself, you can download it and start using it. I promise you at least 3 million people will say, and that will be it about understanding each other. Well, actually, Plovdiv's visual identity prominently featured elements inspired by the Cyrillic alphabet. What you see at the moment is the video presented in September 2024 when we celebrated 2 important dates, 10 years of inauguration and then the 5 years of the opening and the start of the year. And the Cyrillic alphabet is not only Bulgarian national writing system, it is also part of the invaluable heritage Bulgaria shares with the rest of the world. There are 22 countries in Europe and Asia who use Cyrillic-based writing system, and 3 million people globally do so. It is the 3rd official alphabet in the European Union after Latin and Greek. And in today's digital times and unlimited possibilities for communication and information flow, the Cyrillic alphabet stands out with its unique character and I hope a nice challenge. In the projects that you saw here while I was talking, but also those, if an interest is triggered, you can still find in full presentation on the website and the communication channel. There was one horizontal line connecting all the projects and initiatives and activities, and this was the educational participatory part, aimed to promote cultural awareness and language learning. We used, of course, I think as every European capital of culture does, the 2 main languages, or 3, as we heard from Nova Gorica and Gorizia, the 3 languages. So we made all our communication in Bulgarian and English. The projects, so I just featured 2 of the thousands of projects, but the gem are the small-scale projects, which are the communication with the people who either have been as part of the fabric of the city generations, or have chosen to be the new fabric of our city. And it had not been an easy path, and I'm sure that the political will to continue and have a legacy program in Plovdiv was extremely important. My sadness, which probably has a more European Union or even global veil on top of it, is that we tend to be attracted to the easy to communicate, the easy to perceive topics when even comes to culture. And we are so lucky that the selection of the Trieste Film Festival this year, which is the first year where I am an audience of it, shows us the deep entering into the real life. So it's not only about the celebration. In our legacy program, which still has the biggest budget in the country for cultural projects, which is a wonderful achievement, only a very small part goes into small-scale community projects that celebrate the diversity with a degree of real understanding, desire to open. We, during the title year, had a lot of projects in one of our special districts where there are predominantly Roma population. We call it still a ghetto because of the closeness of the people who live there and their hesitance to become part of the other side of the city. And our city do have the tendency to not go into this area. It's called Stulipinovo, and it has 80,000 people living there. It is still considered to be the biggest on the Balkans Roma district. And we don't have any project in the last 5 years dedicated specifically to that group of our society. So when we go and see the connections, the inspirations of our logo, and how we are passing each other the torch, we need to remember to light that torch when we are passing it, otherwise we are passing a numb message. So thank you for opening an important topic, and I hope we will have an important and deep discussion after that.
Grazie a Gina che fece.
Thank you, Gina, for showing us this very colourful world. Before getting to know many more other colourful worlds, we'll have a short coffee break. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. Now, let's open the second session with the keynote speaker, Giustina Silvelli, anthropologist, writer, social linguist. She will be talking about the multilingual heritage of the European capitals of culture in an ecological perspective, lessons from the margins. The floor is yours. Hello, everyone. Buongiorno, dober dan, guten tag, dober den, parev. Bună ziua.
A topic that is really, really dear to me, not only because it constitutes part of my research on ethnic minorities, diversity, multilingualism on so-called Eastern European margins, but also because I have had the privilege of living in many European capitals of culture. Most of the cases occurred actually when these cities were still not European capitals of culture. So these were Gorica, Nova Gorica, living and working, so in Istanbul as well, Plovdiv, Novi Sad. So I have the feeling that in some way I was following the path of these cities before they became Europeans' capital of culture. So I became part also of, let's say, the enthusiasm that was fostering incredible initiatives and also a certain degree of utopia, because this is also an important component of this European Capital of Culture, I believe. So I'll be reading my speech just because I have so many things to tell that I'm afraid I would not be able to convey it in a very linear way, and also because for the interpreter to be able to translate it, it would be quite a challenge. But I also have prepared a very small presentation, PowerPoint presentation for you. I think this is, okay, yes, we can start here. So more than a century has now passed since the end of First World War, when a forced uprooting from our territories of the principles and experiences of multiple identity, multilingualism, and cultural hybridity started taking place. In the border region of Central Eastern Europe, despite the European experience, the unresolved knots of national perspectives, the ethical limits of our atomized societies still emerge, sometimes painfully. As far as Central and Balkan Europe is concerned, both linguistic diversity, understood as the coexistence of different languages in a given area, and traditional societal multilingualism, corresponding to the ability of people to use a diverse repertoire of local languages according to different social spheres, have drastically decreased, similar to what has happened in other post-imperial societies in the wider Eurasian area. We think also of the Caucasus, of other parts in the Black Sea, for example. And in cities such as Gorizia, Novi Sad, Plovdiv, Timișoara, but also Chemnitz, identities develop over the centuries in a long and intense process of interaction between different peoples, languages, and cultures. And in this complex ethno-linguistic mosaic, spoken languages and declared identities did not stand in a simple one-to-one relationship. On an individual level, many Habsburg and Ottoman individuals, we are speaking about the imperial era still, lived in bilingual or multilingual areas and therefore had to acquire some knowledge of a language other than their mother tongue, even though this is also problematic because mother tongues could be multiple, not a single one. So this was happening especially for economic, social, commercial reasons in order to be able to interact with people from different linguistic backgrounds, but it also expressed some sort of communicative willingness. This was very important in the emergence of this opening towards the neighbor, towards also part of the inner diversity of a city. This is why, as a consequence, these complex and intricate multilingual ecologies, as they are called in sociolinguistics, but also in a metaphoric way. Gina talked about ecosystems, so this is the important principle that is something organic, something living, and also potentially fragile. So these multilingual ecologies emerged and developed in specific and concrete situations of human contact and communication. But we know that the post-imperial nation-building processes that started in the 19th and 20th century had a strong impact on linguistic diversity and multilingualism, as they drew new boundaries between ethnic groups and worked towards the homogenization of national culture and language, encouraging the assimilation of minorities, in many cases, in Central and Eastern Europe, and also having impact on this diversity. So over the last century, these linguistic phenomena have been further threatened by modernization patterns such as emigration to other countries, internal migration and urbanization, and also the emergence of new dominant languages in an ever-changing dynamic process. Okay, let's come to this territory. So the history of the province of Gorizia, in which I grew up, one of the cornerstones of the so-called Alps-Adriatic, Alp and Adria region, was marked, as we heard before from Michaela, by a long series of contacts and intermingling between the Germanic, Latin, and Slavic linguistic families, which gave rise to a variety of original cultural expressions which were undoubtedly genuinely European. Here, the assertion of the impoverishing concept of the nation-state after the end of the Habsburg imperial war, particularly in the dark years of fascism in the interwar period, marked a sudden interruption of this fertile outer and inner journey, causing collective removals and closures that have left us deprived of our historical heritage of multiplicity. The province of Gorizia constitutes for the Italian space one of its most marginal points on which European history has concentrated some of its most painful contradictions. In particular, I'm thinking of the period of repression of the Slovenian minority in the 1920s and 1930s, and of the thorny border that separated the city of Gorizia from its vital ecosystem in 1947, so after the end of Second World War. For centuries, the city had been a largely quadrilingual city, where Italian, German, Slovenian, and Friulan were spoken. It also hosted a very important Jewish community. Not everyone had a perfect knowledge of the 4 languages, of course, but there was an effective communicative will and an openness to all these languages, which were at least partially mastered effectively, especially during the interactions in the field of trade. Although the city is today promoted in the collective imagination as an extraordinarily multilingual reality, German has now disappeared, Friulan is less and less used, Slovenian is spoken almost exclusively by the Slovenian minority, and the linguistic landscape has therefore become very impoverished, unfortunately. At the time when I was a student, in the late 90s, early 2000, in Gorizia, the school situation was in a certain sense ghettoized. We heard about ghettos, and I'll come back to this later. We Italians in our schools and members of the Slovenian community in their schools, albeit with some exception. That means some Slovenians who attended Italian schools because of their bilingualism and multilingualism, of course. I rarely met Slovenian students in Gorizia, and I would have loved to have the tools to overcome this state of incommunicability and approach their cultural world of excellence, but no one seemed to be trying to find a way out of this anachronistic situation. We are talking about the early 2000s, just a few years before the entering of Slovenia into the EU, so it would have been very useful for us students to learn the language of our neighbors and of part of our historical community of Gorizia. Our experimental linguistic high school included German, English, French, and Spanish in its curriculum. I would have liked to learn a Slavic language, Russian, or Slovenian maybe, but this was not an option. The absence of Slovenia was certainly a paradox, considering the extreme proximity to the border and given the fact that we heard this language spoken in Gorizia as well, since the Slovenians constitute the second largest community in numerical terms after the Italians. In addition, our physical education lessons were held in the Kulturni Dom, the House of Slovene Culture, just a few steps away from the school, an institution that acted as a bridge for cooperation and improving mutual knowledge between the local communities. But unfortunately, the political and ideological situation in the city was such to prevent any contact between Italian and Slovenian students. It would have been very useful for us teenagers to have at least the basics to be able to understand a few words in the Slovenian language and to be able to navigate the complex context of the cross-border Gorizia region. The fact that this possibility was denied to us made me suspect that there was a bigger underlying problem of which we were unaware. In the early 1990s, in fact, the mayor of Nova Gorica had made a proposal for an agreement with his Gorizia counterpart to foster a climate of dialogue between the two cities, suggesting that a course in Slovenian language, culture, and history be taught in Italian schools, and the same thing, Italian cultural and language, be taught in Nova Gorica. But this recommendation was not favorably received by the politicians of the time, and combined with the issues of bilingualism in public sign, had fueled the nationalist rhetoric of the local right, which feared the Slavization of Gorizia citizens. In the course of my youth, I realized that I found myself in a borderland between East and West, made dysfunctional by the lack of relationality and reciprocity in the way we communicated with our neighbors and with the Slovenian community within our region. With time, I became more and more aware of the lack of ecological connections between the parts of the cross-border territory. It was a broken circulatory system, lacking the ability to relate to our immediate context of reference, without any holistic sensitivity that could integrate all parts of our internal and external diversity. In this regard, in my local observations, the immense value, both concrete and symbolic, of language practices and the autochthonous reality of multilingualism as a form of respect and openness to multiple identities had emerged in particular. So this important plaque that you see was actually erected in Piazza Vittoria, so Victoria Square in Gorizia, thanks to the initiative of some activists in the early 1990s. However, it took them a long time to overcome the opposition of the local municipality, who did not want to include Slovenian among the languages. So there is Friulan, Italian, Slovenian, and German. and it actually commemorates a peasant revolt that happened in the early 18th century. So just to let you know that you could be a student walking around the street in Gorizia and maybe notice this sign and thinking that you're living a multilingual reality, but actually the politics was marching towards a very different direction. So those who master different languages possess an enormous privilege, and at the same time, they take on a highly valuable social responsibility, mediated between different cultures, translating the thoughts and cultures of others with their own language or one of their own languages, contributing to making manifest the further potential of the source cultural code. As stated by philosopher Edouard Glissant in his wonderful book, Poetics of Relationship, applying an ethics of respect for multiplicity implies not ignoring the presence of other languages, but instead having the perception that they exist and continuously influence us. This is not simply a question of knowledge of languages, but more properly a question of the imaginary of languages, and thus about identity. Is it to open it, to speak it in an open way? So learning the languages of neighboring countries and of our also inner minority communities stands as an ethical resource of recognition of a naturally multiple context and a vocation for linguistic pluralism that is manifest in various ways in the border and contact areas of former multi-ethnic empires. So knowing how to accommodate multiplicity within ourselves has ethical implications. However, today we can say that in the Gorizia area, the only representatives of these multilingualism principles and custodians of this legacy are actually the members of the Slovenian minority and also the multilingual Slovenes on the other side of the border, who in most cases speak Italian and maybe Germans and of course English. And they also embody the most authentic representatives of border culture. Many of them, after all, have mixed Italian, Friulian, Slovene ancestry, and sometimes also Austrian. But this, of course, is the case also for a large part of the Gorizia population. When we apply these models to the Eastern European and in particular Balkan spaces, it is problematic that even today, a number of preconceptions prevail on the Western side of Europe. One of which is the idea that the presence of different ethnic groups, languages, and religions in these territories constitutes a problematic issue and is inevitably destined to generate conflict. In my personal journey to build bridges between West and East Europe, I soon came to the realization that the concept of Europe itself was based on the traditions, models, and thoughts coming from the western part of the continent and not from the East, whose contribution appeared to be completely in the shadows, unrecognized, a sort of negative of history. In this regard, it is important to remember how the conflicts in the Balkan area coincided with the emergence of the idea of the nation-state, which was conceived in the West and was alien to the supranational models of coexistence that characterized these territories for many centuries. So it would be more appropriate to value the territories of Southeastern Europe as an important point of contact between the Habsburg Empire and the Ottoman Empire, the East and West, different intellectual canons and religious forms which gave rise to fascinating histories of syncretism, mixing, literary creations, and cultural reappropriations that are absolutely fundamental for our European heritage and also for our European ideals. But despite the political upheavals and more or less successful attempts of homogenization over the last centuries, cities such as the European capitals of culture of Plovdiv, Novi Sad, and Timisoara are still marked by forms of ethnic heterogeneity, hybridity, and cultural syncretism, with the linguistic element playing a fundamental role. The same applies to the city of Chemnitz in Germany, thanks to the historical presence of the Sorbian community, which is considered the smallest Slavic nation, that despite the persecutions during the Nazi era, is still the bearer of a thriving culture that enriches the city, situated just a few dozen kilometers from the Czech border. So there are many interesting parallels, actually, between Gorica, Nova Gorica, and Chemnitz, because they both host a small Slavic minority, which has contributed in creating diversity in these border regions. The high degree of ethnic and linguistic diversity is a factor that was recognized by the inhabitants of Plovdiv, Novi Sad, and Timisoara as an inalienable element of their city and a source of pride. This played a crucial role in the Europeanization path in terms of success of the candidacy for the European Capital of Culture. So Plovdiv in 2019, Novi Sad in 2022, and Timișoara in 2023. They're passed as crucial places of exchange, together with the importance of linguistic diversity, multi-ethnic coexistence, have been highlighted as experiences of great importance and inserted as priority values in the program of the European Capital of Culture, as we have heard before from Gina about Plovdiv. In addition, the title and its implications have also allowed additional processes of promoting multilingualism, as well as super diversity phenomena, that is also the influx of new migrants and new languages in these territories. In Plovdiv, as we have heard before, the initiative for the candidacy brought the significant title of Together, Zajedno. It meant precisely the enhancement of diversity of languages, ethnic groups, cultures, and religions. However, in the bid book of Plovdiv 2019, this aspect was not only explicitly mentioned, but also questioned. Despite the positive rhetoric on diversity and multiplicity, it seemed that the contact between members of these communities were reduced compared to the past. How united are Plovdiv communities? Is it a mere rhetoric of Europeanization, or this togetherness really exists? So the following phrases reported in the bid book are very relevant and revealing. We are proud of the microcosm of European cultural diversity gathered in our city of Roma, Jewish, Armenian, Turkish, Ukrainian, Russian, Italian, British, Orthodox Christian religious communities, but also Catholics, Eastern Catholics, Protestant, Muslim, Jewish, and all different social groups and generations. But on a closer inspection, the Roma minority even lives in ghettos, where the rest of the citizens avoids going. So many initiatives of the European Capital of Culture have therefore oriented themselves towards the inclusion of the Roma community, as we have heard from the beautiful experiences that took place in the Stolipinovo district, and that brought the kids from this neighborhood also to the center. So this is something that was extremely important, and it is really unfortunate that the initiatives could not continue, as we have heard in the course of the last 5 years. But in addition, other activities have tried to enhance the legacy of other linguistic minorities present. I think of the Armenian community that had a specific focus in this European Capital of Culture, and also the legacy of the Cyrillic alphabet, which was also the official writing, the writing system that became the third official writing system of the European Union. So it brought diversity to the European Union. This is something we have to remember. Novi Sad, the capital of the Serbian autonomous province of Vojvodina, also embodies a rare case of multilingual urban landscape, with examples also of 8 different languages. I think I have here a picture. So it is Serbian in Cyrillic alphabet, Serbian in Latin alphabet, Croatian, English, Romanian, Hungarian, Russian, and Slovak. This is something absolutely fascinating. I mean, if you go to this city, you can find really so many examples and manifestations of this linguistic diversity that are made visible in a way so that citizens, even if they don't know these languages, they're still exposed to them. And this is already an ethic of diversity and respect that is manifested, I believe. In addition, the Vojvodina radio and television broadcaster, Radio Televizija Vojvodine, constitutes a precious encouragement to the use of minority and endangered languages, in particular the Bunjevac language, Rusin, Ruthenian, and Romani, with programs also transmitted in Croatian, Romanian, Slovak, Czech, Macedonian, Hungarian, German, Ukrainian, Bulgarian, in addition to Serbian, of course. Can you imagine? This local broadcaster probably knows a few parallels at the European level and even in the world, and is one of the only ones to continuously transmit programs in Romani for over 30 years. An important fact for our European perspective, especially if we consider the fact that in many countries of the European Union, let us remember that Serbia is not in the European Union, in many countries of the European Union, Romani is not even recognized as an official language. This is why speakers of this language do not benefit from any form of recognition and linguistic or cultural rights. Novi Sad also had in its declared objectives in the bid book that of increasing intercultural awareness and promoting multilingualism in the light of the tradition of tolerance that has characterized the city. And the publication illustrates the final program of Novi Sad and also states the following words. These are our bridges, the bridges in which we sincerely believe and where, through equality and love, cultures are connected. These values and principles, which we share with the European Union and which are based on the ideas of human rights, multiculturality, intercultural dialogue, ecological awareness, and peace policy, can be seen in each of our programs. The culture of union is the fulcrum of all values. It marked the identity of Novi Sad for centuries. It is the founding stone of all of our bridges, a principle that we all live. Being part of a community means living with each other, not only next to each other. We have heard also from the presentation of Michaela that many important initiatives have emerged in recent years between Gorizia and Nova Gorica with regards to the valorization of multilingualism, but also an important step forward has been in recent years the return of the Trgovski Dom of Gorizia to the Slovenian community, this building that was the historical building of the Slovenes, but after the tragic facts of the 1920s during fascism, it had been taken away from the community, and finally, 100 years later, in April 2021 actually, the Slovenian community headquarters returned to play a crucial role for the city in terms of contact between the communities, thanks also to the opening of an important Slovenian library. Also, in the sphere of education, although Slovenian, unfortunately, is still not included in the school curriculum of the Italian schools, institutions, more and more parents of Italian origin actually are deciding to enroll their kids in Slovenian schools, both in Gorizia but also on the other side of the border. So they send their kids to kindergarten because they understand what is the resource of learning another language. And this is also very telling because we always maybe wait for institutions to adopt the proper measures, but institutions don't have this long-term perspective, and populations and citizens spontaneously understand the trends before institutions can actually respond. So this is something grassroots that comes from the bottom. And this is something we have to support in general, multilingualism from the bottom. Luckily, also various initiatives have arisen to respond to the multicultural and intercultural challenges of this complex border reality through festivals dedicated to these issues. For example, the Lingua Cultura Festival in Nova Gorica, and the Multiculingo, also focused on issues of multilingualism deriving from new migration. And also, let us not forget that migration is a very important topic, not only for Gorizia today, with the arrival of many communities from also Eastern Europe, but also from North Africa, from Asia, of course, but Nova Gorica itself as a city. It was founded after Second World War, thanks also to the material help of citizens coming from other parts of then Yugoslavia, internal migrants from Macedonia, Serbia, Bosnia, and Kosovo, for example. So this is something really important because it marked also an internationalist perspective that derived from the belonging of Yugoslavia to the movement of the non-aligned. This non-aligned movement, as we know, believed in the exchange and solidarity towards oppressed people, and also through the opening of towards their cultures and languages. So if we had on the other side of the border Gorizia, that was trying to construct and reassert this national identity and was still dealing with its contradictions. On the other hand, we had Nova Gorica that was actually characterized by multiplicity since its inception. So it's the nationalist or the internationalist perspective. It's very different. Cities like Plovdiv and Novi Sad, but also Timisoara, of course, and Chemnitz represent positive models in the context of Eastern Europe, which can also be valued at a broader level in terms of promoting European linguistic diversity. However, it seems that their lessons are not adequately known by citizens from so-called Western Europe. But what is Europe then? We can certainly say that the stories, cultures, and languages from the eastern part of the continent appear to be marginalized still today. They do not seem to have been sufficiently considered in the formation of the European collective narrative. The time has finally come, I think, to believe that a different future for Europe exists, far from what exalts its segmentation in isolated, separated, and atomized microcosms, through the concept of the nation. The roots of Europe and its current states are in fact much richer and varied than the official versions have shown us. There is still a lot of work to be done, in particular a fundamental process of rapprochement between east and west parts of the continent. Certainly, to be born in a city where a multiplicity of languages are spoken daily and where numerous ethnic groups coexist, such as Novi Sad, Plovdiv, or other places in Southeastern and Central Europe could support the affirmation of these multiple identities, which are so important for our vision of an open Europe. In particular, it is desirable that belonging may remain an open question without having to give in to exclusivist identity temptations. In this respect, the heritage of minority languages plays a fundamental role, relativizing the dogmas of the nation state and reconnecting us to multiple prospects of dialogue. In this vision, the recovery of an ecological intelligence that makes us able to be local and self-conscious, to recognize each other as neighbors, to communicate in the native languages without stopping to open up to new ones, that is fundamental. So valuing the assets of cultural diversity of these places also means acknowledging the importance of the contributions given by the most recent migration communities and by people who still are on the way, such as asylum seekers, with the inclusion of their voices in the construction of dialogue, self-awareness, and also remembering our past as migrants, refugees, displaced, precisely because of the wars that have so much marked our cities, our territories. Only in this way will it be possible to create new forms of praise of multiculturalism and interculturality, welcome and recognition of minorities, in opposition to the brutal and tragic interpretation of identity that these places have unfortunately been able to produce. In this sense, in Gorizia, it will be desirable to take a clear and unambiguous stance towards the most tragic recent history through educational and commemorative initiatives of the violence suffered by the Slovenian community in our territories during fascism, the Second World War, and even after, as it's absolutely fundamental for Gorizia to stop being a city that continues to maintain the title of honorary citizen to Benito Mussolini, precisely the person responsible for the denial of the principles of multiculturalism, multilingualism, and respect for minorities in our territories. Similar to the extent to which the cultures and histories coming from the Balkans still appear marginalized in the vision of Europe, still based on essentially centralized notions of civilization and culture, Gorizia and Nova Gorica are marginalized by their respective nation states. Yet, maybe this is also luck in a way, because only the non-centralized identity of the marginal allows us to escape the homogenizing logics of the national and the impoverishment of the singular, making us able to listen to our neighbors and nourish ecological practices of dialogue, cultivated the horizon of the permeable border. The spaces of the European capitals of culture on the so-called margins, such as Gorizia and Nova Gorica, but also in a sense Novi Sad, Timisoara, Chemnitz, they're in fact places of cultural encounters and multiple routes in which national definitions count only superficially compared to the duration of previous multicultural histories. The construction of Europe is therefore played precisely on its margins, with the overcoming of political boundaries and mental limits by cross-border and transnational citizens who can combine their efforts to converge in a new center as embodied by the European capital of culture. This pattern of belonging does not constitute the mere sum of several components, but something different, a communicative and therefore relational experiment, in this sense metaphorically ecological, modeled by hybridization and transformation practices. It is also the so-called third space of utopia, which is something we definitely need in the European capital of culture. Minority identities, with their legacy of multilingualism, have thus a revolutionary potential in these times of sovereignty, nationalism, patriotism, and it is time to strive to listen more carefully to their warnings if we want to act in the most genuine possible way for the development of the European spirit, through our European capital of cultures, which should also be a space for political resistance, criticism, and solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Justina Velvelli. And now we'll move on to another city that was European Capital of Culture. And I would like to ask Nancy Brown, General Manager of Esch-sur-Alzette, European Capital of Culture 2022, to step forward. Lingue minoritarie Quo Vadis Luxemburghese. Minority languages Quo Vadis Luxemburgische.
because when your mother tongue is actually becoming a minority language in your own country, in your home country, so yeah, we have to have also a look on that side and give a different perspective on languages when you're talking about your mother language, which is not in your own country the most important language anymore. So, you just push here the button, okay. So yes, I'm here to represent Luxembourg and more specifically Esch-sur-Alzette, the second largest city in the south of Luxembourg, and which was European Capital of Culture in 2022. Our topic was remix culture, or should we say remix language. So a quite interesting one, because Esch is the most appropriate place in Luxembourg when we are talking about minority languages, as the city with the border region is known for its industrial history, a place which forged the richness of Luxembourg, a hub for Luxembourg steel industry in the 19th and 20th century, but also home today to over 120 different nationalities and communities, where living together goes far beyond bilingualism. Luxembourg is a small multilingual country with a rich linguistic and cultural history. While Luxembourgish, French and German are the official languages among the population of around 670,000 inhabitants, the presence of minority language groups reflects the country's historical immigration patterns, cross-border influences, and of course, being at the heart of Europe is very important as well to remember. The topic of minority languages is a tricky one, as said, especially for Luxembourgish, as it can be considered as a minority language as well, and we will see why later on. Just some historical facts why Luxembourg is what Luxembourg today is. Between 1886 and 1914, Luxembourg's iron and steel industry flourished, leading to a significant industrial transformation. The economic boom in the Grand Duchy created a demand for labor that the native population, diminished by emigration, could not fulfill. A significant number crossed the Alps to work in Luxembourg, booming industrial sector. And no, you know who came to Luxembourg but the Italians. The Italians were actually the first citizens coming to Luxembourg in order to work in that industry. But Italian immigration to Luxembourg began to slow down at a certain moment and even reverse, and as native Luxembourgers increasingly gravitated towards emerging financial sectors, the Luxembourgish government recognized the need for an influx of foreign labor, and in response to it, Luxembourg and Portugal signed a bilateral agreement in May 70, allowing Luxembourgish companies to recruit Portuguese workers primarily for the construction industry. The initial waves of Portuguese workers were eventually allowed to bring their families, and bringing families means a lot when you're moving from one country to another, because integration will work in a completely different way. So leading to the development of a settled expatriate community, in some cases entire villages, you must just imagine this, entire villages from Portugal reportedly moved en masse from Portugal to Luxembourg in search for better economic opportunities. Today, Portuguese is widely spoken in Luxembourg with a robust cultural presence, including media, festivals, and Portuguese-speaking churches, for example. Another interesting fact, a historical fact, is that there was also a lot of Slavic immigration, particularly from Poland, that began in the 19th and early 20th century, also tied to industrialization. More recently, individuals from the Balkans arrived in the 90s due to political upheavals and conflicts in the region. So you can see all these communities have enriched Luxembourg's cultural diversity. And nowadays, and of course, I think it's the same in other European countries, an increase in refugees and asylum seekers, people and languages that characterize today our country and communities we have to take care of. Especially when you now keep in mind, and then I'm coming back to Quo Vadis Luxembourgish, especially when you keep in mind that of the global population, around 50% are foreigners. Over 70% in Luxembourg city capital, 70% in Luxembourg city capital are foreigners. And in Esch-sur-Alzette, the European Capital of Culture, 59 percent of the citizens are foreigners, make of Luxembourg one of, I think, the most multicultural countries, well, let's say in the world. Do you agree? Representing actually 170 different nationalities. And you can see it here on the slide, just a little statistics on how the population is divided between Portuguese, French, Italian, and Belgian and German citizens. Today, whereas the beginning industrialization were the main reasons to immigrate to Luxembourg, today is linked more to economic opportunities and, of course, not to forget the many different European institutions established in Luxembourg. So I would say from red earth to gray matters in Luxembourg. But yeah, Luxembourgish in this context, how will it develop in the future? Luxembourgish is well protected by the government, but Luxembourg does not officially recognize or grant specific protections to minority languages groups in the same way than other countries do. However, the state policies and general framework of multilingualism and inclusivity create a supportive environment for linguistic diversity, including for minority languages. These minority language groups, while not official, play, as we said before, a crucial role in shaping Luxembourg's cultural and social dynamics. Actually, Luxembourg embraces multilingualism at the state level. For example, Luxembourgish, French, and German are the official languages, and this multilingual approach creates an environment where other languages, including minority ones, can coexist and thrive informally. For example, in the education system, while the primary focus is on teaching Luxembourgish, French, and German, there's an increasing flexibility for children from immigrant families to learn their heritage languages through community initiatives. So the grassroots movement here too is very important. But on the other hand, a very interesting fact is, for this small country of 670,000 inhabitants, 10 international schools are existing for the moment, and there are more to come. This in order to support foreign children and adolescents to be able to develop themselves in a multilingual environment. Concerning the public services, for example, in practice, Luxembourg's public institutions, such as government offices, are often accommodating towards speakers of Portuguese, English, or other minority languages. So there also, even if it's governmental, there is a lot of flexibility. We should also talk about cultural or social integration. So the government promotes cultural integration rather than assimilation. While it does not directly fund or formally protect minority languages, it supports cultural initiatives that help preserve and celebrate the diversity of its immigrant communities. And just a small example, because Portuguese community is the biggest one, or the most important one in Luxembourg. A large Portuguese community benefits from cultural organization, Portuguese language media, or local schools where Portuguese is taught alongside official languages. But this exists as well for Italian, for example. And I can imagine with the development in Luxembourg, other languages and other communities will benefit from this system too. So, again, Quo Vadis Luxembourgish. Luxembourgish is the mother tongue for most native Luxembourgers, and many foreign residents learn Luxembourgish as a second language to its importance in social integration and national identity. Bearing in mind the different percentages of foreign communities in Luxembourg, the government promotes Luxembourgish to preserve it as a marker of national identity. But again, I think Luxembourgish is becoming a really, or is it not already, a minority language nowadays? So that's why the government is putting so much emphasis now on the Luxembourgish language. But now, with all these different languages, how communication is done in Luxembourg, because not everybody is speaking language, and we just had the discussion before, due to the different languages we all speak in Luxembourg, so switching the language is becoming quite easy. but yeah, on the one hand, switching language, but have a good communication where everybody can understand you. This is another topic. So, like Esch-sur-Alzette, like the rest of Luxembourg, is deeply influenced, as said, by its multilingual population. However, the use of minority language in official communication is more limited compared to Luxembourg's 3 official languages, Luxembourg, French, and German. Official languages or official communications, for example, the city in Esch, are typically conducted in French, Luxembourgish, and German. Minority languages such as Portuguese or Italian are generally not used in official government communication, but may be present in targeted campaigns or community initiatives. Esch-sur-Alzette had a significant Portuguese-speaking populations. Around 40% of the citizens of the 38,000 inhabitants, 40% of Portuguese, and a notable Italian-speaking community. Recognizing this fact, they make huge efforts to communicate also to these communities in these languages. In order that, for example, the city documents, or they're also like consulting hours where people can come to the municipality and they can speak in their language or ask their questions in their language in order to have a better integration. The city also invests in programs to help newcomers learn Luxembourgish and French, but this also values the linguistic heritage of its immigrant communities. Due to the different communities in Luxembourg, the media presence is diverse as well. From French daily newspapers, everything is produced in Luxembourg, so from French daily newspapers to Germans. There are even some that do mix the use of Luxembourgish, French, and German, to Portuguese and English newspapers, all produced in Luxembourg. So I think nearly for, well, the most important communities in Luxembourg, media presence is assured. And this goes as well for the different radio stations. So, and even with the new different communities arising, I think this will be developed in the coming future. Now coming to the cultural aspect of this multilingualism. The cultural aspect of these different languages, and I do consider Luxembourgish also a minority language. Minority languages in Luxembourg are increasingly used, for example, in literary languages or as literary languages. While Luxembourg's literary tradition has historically been centered on the official languages, Luxembourgish, French, and German, minority languages, especially Portuguese, Italian, and English, are making their mark in various cultural domains, especially in literature. And actually, I promised to bring some examples, but unfortunately, I forgot. But all these different, I can send over some references, so for people who are really interested in this different, or in this topic, because it's quite interesting to see that even books are written in different languages. So in one book with French, German, and Luxembourgish, for example, this is nothing very new for Luxembourg, but it's like becoming not a tradition, but it's just there and produced. So just to say about, for example, Portuguese as a literary languages, the Portuguese-speaking community, so the largest minority group in Luxembourg, has developed a growing presence in the literary scene. Authors of Portuguese origin write not only in Portuguese, but also in Luxembourgish, for example, French or German, bridging their heritage and their adopted country. Publications in Portuguese include poetry, short stories, and essays, often distributed through local cultural associations in collaboration with Luxembourgish publishers. The same goes for the Italians. The same goes for other minority languages. Luxembourg's multilingual environment encourages cross-linguistic literary expressions from writers from minority backgrounds, often publish work in multiple languages, as said, or blend languages with their texts, reflecting their hybrid identities. We also have cultural organizations such as the National Center for Literature and various immigrant associations actively promote minority language literature through events, funding, and publications. Literature festivals and multicultural events often highlight works by authors from minority backgrounds, providing them with platforms to reach wider audiences. In the discussion now, I will not describe different projects we elaborated in the framework of ASH 2022, because I think I would have to talk about all of them because they were all more or less multilingual. But maybe here to stress, because we are talking about literature, there's one very nice literature festival in Betambourg, a very small municipality, which started with a competition for young writers, and it was only focused on Luxembourgish students or young persons. But then with ASH 2022, they changed their approach and made it European. So they included 2 cities, one from Portugal, one from Italy, because they are partnered with these cities, and from Kaunas. So these young writers could participate in this competition. Unfortunately, with Novi Sad, it was a little bit too late because, well, Novi Sad joined a bit later. So, but still, due to the European Capital of Culture, due to this concept, they rethought their concept, and is still existing now. So, and even they think to develop this notion of bringing other languages in this competition, because it's the most wonderful European dimension you can have in such a festival. But there are challenges. So despite the growing presence of minority languages in Luxembourg literary scene, there are challenges. As I said, limited publishing opportunities for minority languages compared to the official languages, and of course, smaller audiences for works written exclusively in minority languages. While Luxembourg literature tradition is still dominated by Luxembourgish, French, and German, minority languages, particularly Portuguese and Italian, are playing now an increasingly significant role. They serve as vehicles for expressing diverse cultural identities and enriching the national literary landscape. Luxembourg's multilingual and multicultural ethos provides a fertile ground for this development. Now coming back to the European Capital of Culture itself and the question about enhancing the richness of multilingualism, was an ECOC useful to this? Well, I could just say in one sentence, although I will develop a little bit. The reality in Luxembourg is, as I said before, we are using different languages quite easily, and switching languages and using languages and having cultural events in different languages or mixing these languages in one event is daily business in Luxembourg. So actually, with the ECOC, we could show not only on a local, national basis, but also on an international basis, the reality in Luxembourg, how it can work. So the challenge in Nova Gorizia with the different languages, well, we have the same. So so it was not only enhancing the richness of multilingualism, but it actually shows how we deal with it every day. So. The designation of ASH as the European Capital of Culture significantly enhanced the richness of multilingualism in Luxembourg by celebrating the city's linguistic and cultural diversity. It provided definitely a platform to highlight and integrate the region's unique multilingual environment into its cultural programming. So, for example, events and artistic projects showcase the city linguistic diversity, including minority languages such as Portuguese, Italian, and others, of course. 93%, or let's say 9 out of 10 projects developed in the framework of the European Capital of Culture were cross-border or had European collaboration. 82% were multilingual, and 75% of team members in general had different nationalities. I don't remember who I told before. When I started with ASH 2022, we were starting with 3 Luxembourgish team members. 2 months later, there came a French lady, a French, a Belgium, so we switched to French. Later on came German and an English-speaking team member, and so it developed. And so from Luxembourgish to French, and our team meetings at the end were always in English. So it's also quite interesting because this is also reality, but a challenge, because understanding each other is not very easy if it's not your mother language. So also this multilingualism is a challenging topic in general. ASH 2022 fostered collaborations between local and international artists, encouraging the blending of languages in creative works. This highlighted the interplay of Luxembourgish, French, and German, and minority languages in everyday life and art. We had like around 10,000 artists and other collaborators, and of which 1,000 from Luxembourg and France spread out to Europe. And you can see on the screen, quite interestingly, and there again, Quo Vadis Luxembourgish, how many events were in Luxembourgish and how many events were in other languages. And so Luxembourgish was not the number one. So again, where do we go with Luxembourgish? But efforts were made to make events linguistically accessible, with translations and interpretations provided in multilingual languages to cater to the diverse population. The year-long celebration reinforced ASH's image as a hub of multiculturalism and multilingualism, inspiring ongoing dialogue about the value of linguistic diversity in fostering social cohesion. Actually, and this is also concerning the heritage, when we made the survey at the end of the European Capital of Culture of the title year, interestingly enough, 65% of the people asked will explore culture in new additional languages. So I think with the program, with this multilingualism, with this really big diversity, this made people keen on looking for other experiences in other languages. So I think by programming in different languages, this is also developing audiences, in not only in the respective languages, but also that people get aware that other things exist in other languages and also want to discover. So again, ASH 2022 successfully used its platform to enhance the richness of multilingualism by celebrating and integrating diverse languages into its cultural narrative. It demonstrated the importance of linguistic diversity as a key element of cultural identity and inclusivity in modern European context. And then coming to the communication, how was it at the end done? The official communication was predominantly in French, Luxembourgish, and German, or English better, ensuring the accessibility. But just to say that our, for example, the website was in French, German, and English. We made a research on if we should do it in Luxembourgish, but at the end we just skipped this possibility because we found out that even the platforms which are using Luxembourgish language are not used, not even by Luxembourgers. So I think already translating in 3 different languages is already a challenge. So we just kept the French, German, and English possibilities. We adapted as well the use of different languages depending on the media we used. For example, in social media, a lot of different messages were sent in English and only in English. And depending with whom we were talking to, we just switched the language. So we used from Luxembourgish, French, German to English, and also often organized translations when we, for example, for guided tours, these tours were organized in the basic languages, but also as there were a lot of demands for the Arabic languages or Chinese, or, well, the refugees were in Luxembourg, for example, Ukrainian people. So we could easily switch also to satisfy the demand of these guests in the framework of ASH 2022. So I think ASH 2022 effectively communicated and celebrated linguistic diversity, integrating multiple languages into its programming while enhancing the visibility and value of the region's linguistic heritage. By blending Luxembourgish official languages and minority languages, it created a vibrant cultural narrative that highlighted the power of multilingualism in fostering inclusivity and cultural exchange. However, it is also a reality in Luxembourg that communication is done in different languages in general. Through the European Capital of Culture, we were able to highlight this fact again to attract people and develop audiences. But to get back to the initial title, The Future of Luxembourgish Language, or Luxembourgisch, in Luxembourg is a topic of significant cultural and political interest. Luxembourgish is not only a symbol of national identity, but also one of the country's 3 official languages, as said. The challenges today are important. Luxembourgish was officially recognized as a national language in 1984, cementing its role as a core element of national identity. Luxembourgish is taught in schools as a subject, but is not the primary language of instruction. German and French are used more extensively for teaching other subjects. Efforts are being made to enhance Luxembourgish into the school system, especially in the pre-primary level, where it is seen as an introductory language for children from diverse linguistic backgrounds. But Luxembourg population is highly multilingual, with over 50% of residents being foreigners. In some sectors, especially business and international organizations, Luxembourgish is less frequently used, often replaced by French or English. The complexity of Luxembourgish grammar and its limited use in formal and international contexts can be barriers to wider adoption. While Luxembourgers face challenges due to the country's multilingual nature and its relatively small speaker base, strong institutional support and community pride ensure its preservation and growth. Its future likely lies in balancing its role as a marker of national identity with the realities of an increasingly globalized and diverse population. My 32 Eurostat forecasts a 10.9% increase of the population, knowing that the native Luxembourgers remain stable but grow slower than the foreign population. It will not only be interesting, I think, to see how the Luxembourgish language will evolve, it will, of course, also be exciting to see how the various languages in Luxembourg will develop, because in the end, every language will be considered as a minority language in Luxembourg. So for the next ECOC, and it will come, I suppose, by the end of 30, 38, 39, we will see how the Luxembourgish language will be integrated in the program, and how the program at the end will look like, considering this multicultural situation in Luxembourg. Thank you very much.
Continuiamo il nostro viaggio attraverso le capitali europee della cultura. Adesso accanto a me Ramona Lazco David, coordinatrice dei progetti di Timișoara, Capitale Europea della Cultura. Il suo argomento Timișoara 2023 Legacy, Strengthening Cultural Participation and Access to Culture. L'eredità di Timișoara 2023, potenziare la partecipazione e l'accesso alla cultura. Prego.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to be again part of the INCOC panel. Well, this year with an important topic that maybe wasn't such a clear objective of the European Capital of Culture program in Timișoara, but nonetheless, when we talked about the strengthening of the participation and access to culture, it was always with this side towards the ethnic minorities in the city, and how the Timișoara took pride of being a multicultural city. And we had endless discussions, of course, in the curatorial team and towards when we designed the open calls in order to extend the cultural program, about what actually underrepresentation means, not just in connection with marginalized communities, but also with the ethnic minorities present in the city. And the discussions were always revolving around social inclusion versus artistic excellence. If you would be willing to risk the artistic excellence of a cultural project, having an imbalance between what it would mean to open up to a large minority group or to a diverse origin of the actors and of the production itself, versus the artistic excellence as the main driving goal in the cultural production process. And then, well, we realized that sometimes we are also working in silos, so multidisciplinary teams and dialogues with the representatives of ethnic minorities were not a given. And it had to be a conscious choice and a process in order to build up cultural projects which are representative for the cultural minorities in the city. And also the mindset of the cultural operators being like, for example, the Hungarian cultural minority being one of the biggest right now in Timișoara, and understanding or for them making them to understand that it's not about just showcasing your culture to the other audiences and to the other people. It's just it has to be a co-production process. It has to be already embedded in the thinking of the project itself. And well, cultural policies at the level of the municipality, taking really social inclusion, minority rights, and everything as a transversal object in how the cultural policies are built up. So with these ideas in mind, I will just present a bit of historical background of Timișoara from the censuses that were done in different years, so from 1920 to 2021, and you see how dramatically it has changed the map of ethnic minorities. So if in 1920 the Germans were on the first place, followed by the Hungarians, and then Romanians and Jews as the main ethnic minorities, throughout the history, of course, with all the political changes, which are, well, similar to what has happened here as well in the region, but we didn't have Angelo Caccetti as a best comic to make fun of all these changes in the history of our region. Well, here we see, and these are figures, just an important note that these are figures not for Timișoara city level, but for Timișoara metropolitan area. All right, so this is the figures that in 2021 we see a totally dramatic change. Romanians, of course, are the dominant cultural population, then followed by the Hungarians, the Roma community, the Serbians, the Germans, Ukrainians now in a large group following the war in Ukraine, and Bulgarians, Slovaks, Italians, and Jews dramatically down as a number. So in this context, some of the voices were arguing that maybe Timișoara it's not so it's not anymore so multicultural as any other as a city in the southern part of Romania, because usually it was always the cities, the bigger cities in Transylvania, which would take pride in their multicultural, diverse societies. And we see that this has changed a lot, actually, in the country. So yeah, this is a chart. Sorry, I just realized that I haven't changed the years at the chart, so it should be actually 1920, 1930, 1941, 1956, 1977, 1992, and 2021. How the percentage of Romanians has grown in the Timișoara metropolitan area, and. Sorry, it doesn't. Yeah. Well, in terms of what structures are there in the cities, so as legal entities, there is an advisory council of national minorities, which is hosted by the municipality of Timișoara since March 2013. And then there is a minorities and international relations department, which is part of the international, intercultural, and economic cooperation service, but which is still not fully accomplished in terms of the people working there. So there are 3 positions, out of which currently is only just 1 occupied. And then there is the Center for Inclusion and Minority Relations, which is part of the social welfare department. And then there are a number of NGOs and cultural organizations, the Intercultural Institute of Timișoara, which is one of the most active ones. They've been developing projects within the cultural program, for example, with ERIAC. It is the European Institute for, the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture with their office in Berlin, and they work together, and they developed a project within the European Capital of Culture program. And there are the Hungarian State Theatre, the Csiki Gergely, Timișoara, and the German State Theatre. So I'm actually Hungarian and Romanian ethnic, so I take advantage of the fact that there are theaters in my, let's say, mother tongue language, but they also have subtitles. So if you go to the theater show shown by the Hungarian State Theatre, then you will be able to understand if you are a Romanian or at the German theater as well. Education. Well, here, education in minority language is in German, Hungarian, and Serbian. There are schools in these 3 languages, schools up to university level, and then within the university, the West University of Timișoara, there's the Faculty of Letters, the different departments for the minority languages, and the Faculty of Theatre, which has a German section. And in terms of media, well, there is the national television, which has Timișoara regional programming. Then there's Radio Timișoara. Then there's Temesvári Radio, which is very active, actually, and they've been very, well, and Nancy showed before in terms of the communication of the cultural program for Timișoara 2023, we did the same assessment. Would it make sense to have the website also translated beside Romanian and English into one of the minority languages as well. And we realized that the efforts to do this would have been immense in terms of the people actually using those channels of communications. So what we did, actually, we had partnerships with Temesvári Radio, so with radio, with smaller media outlets, where we would do a summary of the highlights of the project happening, a monthly newsletter, let's say, in the language Hungarian or German or Serbian. Then there are newspapers, well, Allgemeine Deutsche Zeitung für Romanian. This is a regional newspaper and a Hungarian newspaper as well. But the good thing is that actually, for example, the Hungarian minority is very well represented as well through a lot of NGOs and foundations, which were able to receive money through the open calls that we organized in the context of the European Capital of Culture program. So there was really a lot of participation from the Hungarian minority. Well, there are also a number of annual ethnic minority festivals. These are organized mainly by the House of Culture, which is an inheritance of the communist times. The House of Culture as a public cultural institution. And they organize several festivals. The most known one is a Festival of Hearts, which is not only focusing on the local ethnic minorities, but also inviting a lot of ethnic minorities from different countries of the world, so not just Europe. And Hungarian Cultural Days, Serbian Cultural Days as well. Now, within the, in the program, where we try to focus on the multilingualism and on the cultural diversity, but also European multiculturality to reflect it more into a local context, was through projects that were addressing common heritage, were also projects where there was a close exchange program between different local communities and European cultures and communities. There were the partnerships, of course, with border regions within Serbia, Hungary, but also a lot of Germany. And later on, you will see a bit a map which will represent the most intense international partnerships that we managed to establish through the culture program, and then residency initiatives with international artists. And this is one of the actually components of the program which we would like to further continue. So this year we hope actually to launch a residency program in Timișoara to be able to host artists. And actually I have selected two projects which were developed before 2023, within 2023, and they continue even in 2024 and in 2025. One of them is called The Parallel City. It is an immersive theater experience, and for me, as a newcomer, actually in Timișoara, because I'm from the northern eastern part of the country, lived a lot in Sibiu, then abroad, and then again back in Romania. It was the easiest way to discover the history of the city, because it takes you, the theater production takes you to the historical sites of Timișoara. And the actors, it's a collaboration between the actors from the German State Theater and the Hungarian State Theater, and they talk in Hungarian, Romanian, and German. So coming back to what I said at the beginning, that here there was not the sphere of artistic excellence versus social inclusion versus the representation of different ethnic minorities. It was already from the beginning thought as a collaboration between different actors with different cultural identities. So I will just let themselves speak.
Aveți un minut la dispoziție. Fraza începe: înainte să mor, vreau să. Și acum începem să măsurăm timpul.
E o petrecere teatrală, un fel de festin, dacă vreți, al poveștilor. Se suprapun aproximativ 7 spectacole de teatru, 7 povești. Fiecare personaj interpretat de câte un actor este activ non-stop în acest univers. Deci ca și cum te-ai teleporta într-o lume paralelă și în acea lume paralelă îți faci propriul film.
Și la tine vreau să fie bine. Și la toți. Ești prezent sau la prezent?
Nu știu. Candidatul perfect.
Ce nu zic ei aici e că odată deschis portalul, nimeni nu vă garantează că o să puteți și să rezistați în acest oraș paralel.
Oraș paralel și acest tip de scritură pentru imersiv, care combină destul de multe forme teatrale și nu numai, îți oferă o bogăție imensă în ceea ce înseamnă dezvoltarea unui text dramatic, producând o invitație către spectator de a trece cumva, a se imersa, de aici și termenul de imersiv, de a se scufunda în povestea propriu-zisă.
Eu sunt XO.
Pe voi, cum vă cheamă? Ioana.
Primiți câte 10 cărți. Jucăm maxim 15 minute. Sistăm jocul și mergem înapoi la orașul paralel. Dacă traversați labirintul oglinzilor, aveți șansa să intrați în pădurea șoaptelor.
Doamne, incredibil!
E cam filme, acum vreau să mă întorc înapoi.
So back to my slides. So this indeed was a very interactive. The audience had the chance to like really directly participate into the theater play. And then another project that I selected, which was also one of my favorites, so I'm subjective in my selections, of course, it was Remix ID. It was an initiative that collected rural stories from the rural areas of the Banat region, so the surrounding region of Timișoara, and they brought it into a really contemporary interpretation. So there were theater plays, small theater plays with dancing, with movement, which involved kids from the school, actors working with the kids from the school. There were very nice interviews with some of the people in the villages, and there were contemporary arts exhibitions. So everything was really very multidisciplinary and participatory from the beginning as well, thought out. And here as well, there is a small presentation video of this collaboration. So it started in 2018. And it continued last year as well. We had them part of a legacy program, which we continue to support from the Center for Projects Timișoara. And they put together a small theater play with different kids from the different schools from Timișoara, so from the Hungarian school, from the Serbian school, from the Romanian school. So these are projects which really, again, it was very important to think, to design from the beginning, from the start, not just as a multidisciplinary and participative process, but as having in mind the social fabric, the multilingual representation in the city. And what is great actually, because we have here from colleagues from Nova Gorica, the Hungarian State Theatre has another collaboration project with the Nova Gorica, and it's theater director Tomi Janecek. I'm not sure if I pronounced it very well, and it's a theater play about the communist times in Romania. It's called 1978, and it's actually a transgenerational story. The action take place in an apartment in Romania in the 70s, and it's again a nice example of collaboration between, for example, the Polytechnic University and the state theaters. And I think this is again an important thing when we talk about cultural participation or access to culture, because the content was taken out from the conventional theater space. And this has made it interesting for different types of public to participate in these cultural projects, cultural events. So as with the Parallel City, taking you through the historic neighborhoods, but this year they actually focused on, as you've seen it in the video before, they have focused on an abandoned big building that is at the heart of the Polytechnic campus. They refurbish that and they make it as the scene for their theater play. And it's the same now with this play that is developed together with the team from Nova Gorica to have another building of the Polytechnic University that is used for this theater play, and they have refurbished some 3 different spaces in the building. So it is an effort from the production point of view, but the results are much more intense and with a greater impact on the audiences. And then when we talk about the future, where here with Timișoara, what are Timișoara's legacy, and especially in connection to this topic of strengthening participation, access to culture, to the different communities, well, we realized that Timișoara actually was always a city that considered itself very comfortable, very self-sufficient, competitive. There was always a competitiveness to other bigger cities in Romania, to Cluj, for example. We always compare ourselves, or to Bucharest. So from this self-sufficiency also in terms of, we are a multicultural city, but without actually knowing what that actually means. So to a more connector, so experimental and collaborative. So this is what we try to really push for in the cultural, through the cultural program and through the ECOC title. Well, now when it came to really like building up the legacy plan, there was a very intense discussion about what could be the identity of the city, and later on I will go to that slide as well. But for the legacy plan, we really took it methodologically, let's say, and we had a lot of quantitative analysis so we had focus groups organized, and we looked through all the narrative reports of all the cultural projects that we financed in the year 2023, interviews and focus groups with the cultural operators, network analysis. So the network of the cultural organizations in Timișoara has grown immensely, and I will show you in the next slide a map showing this incredible growth because of the European Capital of Culture program. And we really did it through participatory planning and consultation with the main actors of the cultural program. And well, I will also give you some figures in order to understand what is now the context of this legacy plan in terms of what we envisage for the future. And we realized that, well, we have grown to 850 organizations that were involved in the program, but this includes also international partnerships. So it's not just international and national and regional partnerships as well. There were more than 300 projects, 300 locations, and more than 2,300 events. And here is the distribution of actually of those 850 organizations between the percentage, how much it was local, national, and international. And this is the geographical distribution of the project partners. Of course, when it comes to local, Timișoara and the region was one of the main ones, but then also Bucharest, and then other regions from Romania, Cluj, Iași, as well. And then internationally, the most represented is Germany, and then Serbian countries as well, but France as well. And this is the evolution of the ecosystem. So from 2017, from the original concept of the bid book and the organizations that were already part of it, and how it grew through the years, through the preparatory years, and then in 2023. And each of these dots actually represent a connection between one organization, as for example the lead organization in applying for funding, and then the partnerships that were established. Well, here for the legacy, and I mentioned accessibility, access to marginalized or vulnerable communities and ethnic minorities to cultural events. We realized that even through these cultural, through this consultation, public consultation, that is still important to work on these topics of diversity and inclusion, of experimentation and innovation, of having programs which really go into the capacity building of cultural operators to be able to develop projects which are really inclusive. And then, well, engagement also remained an important topic, and democratization of cultural production was actually one of the strengths of the Timișoara Cultural Program, because it wasn't the main pillars that were the three organizations behind the governance model. It was the cultural operators who implemented it wasn't in-house the program developed. So this has really conducted to this democratization of cultural production. And it had to be a transfer of trust, of the trust from the municipality to the cultural operators, even if there were projects who maybe didn't reflect their wishes, or they were critical towards the cultural policies that the municipality is adopting. And it is this drive to have a shared vision between the cultural operators. And I think in this regard, we've accomplished a lot, and these are still things that need to continue. And here, when we talk about identity, well, this is what I started my talk with the question of identity of the city. And there were discussions, okay, but Timișoara is a contemporary art city, or is a city of festivals, of multiple festivals. And we realized through the consultation processes, we actually try to emphasize that it doesn't have to have one identity only, city. So this was the conclusion. And it's more about valuing local resources and stimulating local cultural production and original artistic production, and this interpretation of what it means, the European spirit of Timișoara, so what it means Europe at home, and not just looking towards European values outside of the country and of the region. Well, and for this, the most important is connection, so coordination and cohesion mechanism, encouraging innovation, and of course, attracting artistic excellence. And this is where this residency program fits in. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for the discussions, questions that you might have.
Well, there's some room now for questions. I would like to say something to start. A lot of the speakers spoke of the local media in reference to this region and on the topic of the multilingualism of this region. The RAI, the national television of this region, has broadcasts in 3 different languages: Italian, Slovenian, and Italian. I've seen that the speakers have spoken a lot during the coffee break. Is there something that you didn't ask in the coffee break and you'd like to ask them now? I can't see any hands, so I'll raise my hand. And just a tiny observation on the situation in Luxembourg. It was said that there is a remarkable Portuguese minority, and there are relationships between Luxembourg and Portuguese. Not only are they Portuguese citizens, there are also lots of citizens of Cape Verde. The official language there, of course, is Portuguese, but they speak Creole and Cape Verdean. So are these 2 minority languages going to be included in the languages spoken in Luxembourg?
So you mean the...
Risponde Nancy Brown.
Yes. So you mean now the Creolean, or I didn't really get the translation right?
Creolo Portoghese.
Yes. So, well, the Cavadian...
Ah, sorry.
The Cavadian
in Capo Verde, they speak, the official language is Portuguese, but people speaks Creolo Portuguese.
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, in Luxembourg, the Cavadian inhabitants speak Portuguese. Suppose between them, they have also their native language Creolean, but in Luxembourgish Creolean is not really in use. So, and interestingly enough, we have a high number of, I think it's around 2,800 inhabitants coming from the Cabo Verde, and for example, like 2,500 only coming from the United States. So this Portuguese community, which was important and still is important in Luxembourg, well, development actually.
Grazie. Nel frattempo qualcuno ha qualche domanda? Prego, arriva il microfono.
Grazie. Jay Weisberg, direttore della Giornata del Cinema Muto. It's more of an observation and a statement. First, thank you very much to everyone for these really exceptional panels. And I want to just touch on something that has been mentioned a little bit in some of the other panels, and that is that Europe has now become a continent of immigrants, whereas in the past it was the contrary. So I'm wondering how European capitals of culture are integrating not just the minorities, linguistic minorities who come from those countries or from neighboring countries, but what we're doing in terms of Arab populations, African populations, Far East Asian populations, to ensure that indeed there is an understanding of how we integrate these populations and make them feel a part of these celebrations of Europe and what Europe means, not as what you mentioned before of assimilation, but of integration. I don't know that there's really an answer for that right now, but I think it's vital that we be talking about that more and more as our governments increasingly are working against that idea.
Nancy Brown.
That's a very good observation. I have the same look at this discussion, and I think European Capital of Culture as a concept is a very good initiative or project in order to promote this integration. And I think if Europe isn't careful about culture and its people, this will be, culture and the future of Europe itself, it will be very difficult in the future. And we can see it. I think during all these years, we were talking about, not about people or the citizens of Europe or the citizens coming to Europe, but we were only speaking about economic and financial facts, and that's a problem. And so if we're not careful, we see the situation we're in today. And I think it's this year, 25, where the concept of European Capital of Culture is celebrating 40 years. So I hope this 40 years and now the celebrations will open the minds not only of local national politicians, but also about European politicians in order to be aware what European Capital of Cultures mean and what they can bring in the future.
That's something. Yes, unfortunately, also at the EU level, there is no real valorization of languages coming from more immigrant communities. So this is a fact also for, respect of linguistic rights. There is no real policy to actually include these languages, this heritage. And this is actually a missed opportunity for the construction of a different idea of diversity. So we are selectively multilingual or diverse. We're not really doing much to foster dialogue across communities, but also to actually support some of the languages of these migrant communities, which are actually endangered maybe somewhere else, or actually somehow, let's say, a resource for other citizens or for themselves. So this is also problematic. So I think that the European Capital of Culture could actually go against such trend of neglecting the heritage of migrant communities. But I'm not aware whether something has been actually done. I don't think that in Gorica Nova Gorica case, there is anything specifically devoted to such topical issues. Maybe I'm mistaken, but as far as I know, there isn't anything specific.
Just to reply, actually, I don't know if my colleague Michaela wants to add something, but actually, in order to answer to your question, everything in our communication, in our approach, in our program is trilingual. And it's not easy to guarantee, because it's in the other European Capital of Culture, or in some of them, most of the information, also through the social networks, were given through the national language, and then a summary in English. In our case, I'm proud to admit and to affirm that everything is completely trilingual. So you have to understand that it's quite easy to guarantee this perfect trilingualism. Add other languages, yes, why not? Everything could be improved. But as English is a lingua franca, it could be answered to this question. Thank you.
I'm taking the mic. Thank you, thank you, and thank you. And thank you for the question. And a very pragmatic, and in the same time, I hope, not only pragmatic reflection. usually the program of European Capital of Culture is developed, hopefully to win the title, 8 years before the year of delivering of a program. Luckily, there would be some adequate artistic management supported by more adequate political leadership that would leave a pocket of possibility for the teams of European Capitals of Culture to reflect on urgent new matters. Like, for example, in Plovdiv, we recently have representatives of Ukraine, Russia, Armenia. We deal with that only through the possibility of a small grants which leave only the representatives of those communities to present themselves, that to mark we are here. Yet there is no dialogue, there is no communication on the basis of we are welcome, are we welcome, what are we doing, how much we were ready to know, how much we are ready to share. And it's an important topic when it, as Nancy said, about if we do a policy of development of European Capitals of Culture, how much we are allowed to reflect on the needs that are coming after these 10, 8, 5 years of preparation. Yeah.
Just to add to what Gina said, well, in Timișoara, it was by coincidence and by, well, through the turmoil that was before 2021, the political and the local contest problems that were real in the preparation of the title year, which made that in 2021 there was a curatorial team with 7 people brought into the program, which have rethought the artistic, well, of course, still within the principles of the bid book, but it was the opportunity to rethink some of the project, to rethink some of the objectives, and then include this newer urgent topics that the city is dealing with. So again, I think indeed it's very important to leave this pocket for the European Capitals of Culture to be able to update their original program from 5 years, 6 years, 8 years before.
There needs to be a lack of innocence because, for example, just a very pragmatic example from the half of my origin. I'm Armenian, half of my family. There is a strong Armenian community in diaspora in Bulgaria. The Plovdivian diaspora is one of the biggest Armenian diaspora in Bulgaria, and yet when the new Armenian groups are coming to Plovdiv from current Armenia, seeking economic hope of something better, there is even within that community, so the established Armenian community that lives in Plovdiv and that considers itself a Plovdivian representative, quite rightfully, there is even there a need to cultural bridging with the other new Armenians. They're even called in a different way. So, yeah, so it's a lot and it's needed and it's continuously urgent. So there is no status. We reached, we dealt that problem. Congratulations, let's go on the next page. We're still continuously on one and the same.
I just want to clarify something. I'm not at all suggesting that communication, the languages of communication need to be expanded. I know only too well how difficult it is to get 2 languages right, let alone 3 or 4. But coming from the film festival world, increasingly, and this is true internationally, I've seen how rarely film festivals make outreach to recent immigrant communities. And this has always concerned me, that when you have, for example, a Filipino film that's screening in the United Arab Emirates, and you don't have an outreach to the Filipino community, which is enormous in the UAE, what are you doing? And I'm more or less directing my question, statement, whatever you want to call it, towards that idea, not in a general, we need to include everybody. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible, in terms linguistically impossible, and every other way. But outreach programs that are directed specifically towards various new communities, these pockets that you're saying, which is a great way of devoting the little resources that exist to maybe just making that bridge when possible.
Well, the truth is, I don't know if you agree with me, that sometimes, the attention on some languages and on some, ethnical groups is also connected to privilege. So if we talk about underprivileged communities, basically nobody cares about them. So, nobody cares about including them and addressing, any program to them. And this is, where we should really improve, our sensitiveness, our efforts, to be really more inclusive. We rant about being, inclusive and, open, but actually it's not true. It's not true. Especially, you mentioned, Gina, that one of the languages, it's not just a matter of languages, it's a matter of cultural groups and historical groups that have been living, in Bulgaria for centuries now. For instance, one is the Roma group. And we know that, being Roma in Europe today is still like a stigmate. It's really, it's still very difficult to have the same dignity as the other European citizens for many reasons, for historical reasons and cultural reasons, and really not understanding who they are, what they do, how they live. So, for instance, in Berlin. And I was talking about it with you before. There's a fantastic festival which is. Roma, Archidikea, yes, the Archidikea festival. I know the director, and he speaks like 12 languages. And he really addresses this festival to everyone, so not only to the Roma people of Berlin, but actually to, to everyone, in order to promote the Roma culture and language. And so the role of culture, I think, is paramount. Through culture, you really can, build bridges, you can include more people. Like the festival, here we're doing the same, actually. So through the films, through these debates, through these moments of, social moments of gatherings and exchanging ideas, this is the only way, this is the only tool we have, to reach more people and, to make them feel included. And although I hate the word inclusion, because there is someone that includes and someone who's included, so even there, it's not fair. So, this is what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for this question. It was really interesting. Also, all the other people that's speaking. I would just add two things about Gorizia and Nova Gorizia as a European capital of culture, because I think that basically also as the previous speaker said, and about our territory, already the inclusion, actually the cooperation between Italy and Slovenia, it's not that easy. So we are really focusing our program on this go borderless idea. So this really trying to connect again the population that is living between Italy and Slovenia, and really trying to make them understand that the people that are living on the other side of the border are not that far away, and you need to get to know them and cooperate and share things, building bridges and stuff, as we were talking now. And this is already a really sensitive, I think, context to be addressed. So it was kind of difficult, I think, to address also other actually really important problems that are currently in our territory, in whole Europe, and so on. And also I think that sometimes about migrants and other minorities and stuff, sometimes this topic is also kind of difficult at a political point of view. So I think that we are really trying to work on culture to create bridges, and we have to do it step by step. So right now we are working really on that Italian Slovenian cooperation. And I hope that maybe for the legacy, this should be really an added value to include also other minorities and other languages and other things. Thank you.
If I may, somebody spoke of the Roma population. I received all the speakers who participated this morning, and there was, in fact, in Silvelli's presentation, a section that really struck me, the idea that the Romani language is not recognized as a minority language. I found that very interesting, so I went to comment it in Italy, of course. But I noticed that not even at a European level is it recognized. I went into that, and the Faculty of Political Science in 2016, of Teramo in 2016, started a process to recognize Romani as a minority language. This was published in the official gazette. However, the process somehow got stuck. I've heard this from Giovanni Agresti, who was professor in the Faculty of Political Science in Teramo. I spoke to him directly. He's currently in Morocco, and he followed up the process of the Romani language. And then he said that in 2019, there was an initiative in Calabria. There was a draft proposal for a regional law, which, of course, got stuck. I mean, it had all the problems associated to the pandemic. And he described to me a very interesting situation, which I think deserves a greater attention, possibly not in this framework. But as I said, it's interesting and should be looked into in further depth. The Roma who were involved and contacted were unable to manage the situation. The situation for them was perceived as being completely foreign. The idea that they could raise their voice, that they could give their point of view, they found it hard to be in that official position. And this brought to mind a meeting with a Slovak director, Maher, who, during a lunch, said, "For my country, liberty is like a green meadow, but we don't know if we can cross it. And secondly, which is the pathway that we are allowed to walk within that meadow?" So there's this not wanting to talk too much about oneself. So trying to find a way to reveal one's world. The request for the recognition of the Romani language as a minority language was very often connected to the issue of their nomadic status, which has made the process even more difficult. Therefore, it might be interesting if we could find a means to communicate that would allow these people to feel free. We often speak of them through fascinating stories. We think of great films on this population, or to underline their inclination to be delinquents, which I think is possibly what is most disseminated, if you like. Indeed, these are people that we find ourselves at the side of in the roads, in the streets, in the hospitals, in the supermarkets. So it's a theme that really, really struck me. But going back to you, the audience, and the speakers in particular, some of the speakers who spoke of their city, how your city experienced the fact of being European capital of culture. Did any of you have the opportunity to delve deep into other European capitals of culture to understand how they were managed, how this opportunity was managed in other countries? Do any of you want to talk about this?
New, different experience of European capital of culture. Nancy Brown e anche Ramona Lozco David.
Well, I took the opportunity to travel a lot around and see how other capitals managed and dealt with the subject of multilingualism. And due to the fact that in Luxembourg, as I said before, we are so used to have these multilingual possibilities and we can read and see things in different languages, I was quite surprised how it was done in other capitals. For example, well, I take now Kaunas because it was striking me because there were some museums, for example, I entered and there was the text on the walls were only in Lithuanian and not even a QR code or another sign which showed a translation, not even into sentences. So I was quite surprised because we were talking about European capital of culture and we talking about Europe and bringing foreign people or visitors to our cities and capitals. So, but I think this is also the case in other cities, and I saw it also in others because but as Kaunas, it was so striking. So I was really surprised. But I'm also aware that, as you said before, well, it's an exercise to be done to translate elements in other languages. It takes time. It's also about financial resources. I think this is also a point. The financial resources you need to write and to translate and to produce. But I think if we cherish the multilingualism and being accessible to as many people as possible, I think it shouldn't be the challenge of financial resources which would or should refrain us from doing this exercise. But but in general, I think I would urge other capitals to really pay attention to this, because maybe people can be discouraged when coming to places where they don't understand what the project is about. But I suppose there are different reasons which I ignore now why it wasn't done. I think it was not done by purpose or on purpose, but I think there are other reasons behind why it wasn't done. But I think this is an experience, which I keep in my mind, and when I will travel, I will for sure pay attention to that too.
Thank you.
Well, for me, it was the occasion to participate in Sibiu 2007 European Capital of Culture as a collaborator of a Hungarian cultural organization in the program. And I could make a comparison because it was Sibiu, it had a totally different cultural program at that time. It was when Romania joined the European Union. It was all about the showcase of the cultural excellence, big artistic productions. It was really into this mindset of big event festivals and so on and so forth, which has changed with Timișoara 2023. And it is a striking difference. And when it comes in particular to the Roma community in Timișoara, which is very present, the mayor in his campaign last year had this image of him going into houses, cultural heritage houses that somehow got into the Roma community. They transformed and they intervened in the nice architectural fabric of the buildings. And there was this also some of the public spaces were just abusively closed up by some members of especially of the Roma community, and then he named, actually it was the political party behind him that named that as the Roma community wasn't, and there was a huge scandal about it, rightfully so. But, and then there are cultural organizations in Timișoara who are fighting against this underrepresentation of the Roma community within the cultural life of the city. There are independent theaters. There is a small film festival, ROD, it's called Documentary Film Festival, and they really try to bring more attention to the Roma community in Timișoara. But there was in 2019 a journalist who said, if you don't speak Romani at home, you are not a Roma. So there we have so many things, so many stereotyping to still fight against. And with new migrant communities in the city, it's even more difficult to deal with. And if Romania hasn't been so exposed to this new migrant community since a couple of years, and 5 years at least, it's much more present. So we have migrants from Southeast Asian countries, South Asia, Arab countries as well. And this consultative body of ethnic minorities doesn't have yet representation of these new migrant communities in the city. So it's working process, I guess.
We have few minutes. But there will be enough.
No. Thank you. What changed with the 40 years of European Capital of Culture also is the fact that it goes more and more, if the artistic program is well constructed, to cities that need it in order to change and receive something enhanced after it. So, for example, in 2018-19, Plovdiv was not yet, with all the museum or galleries, ready to welcome quite communicatively foreign guests. It's also because of their quantitative analysis. Okay, how many would come? Okay, so we don't have enough money to pay for translation, then to put all the labels and so. This gradually, not everywhere in the city of Plovdiv, and we are talking about a small city after all, had changed. But only through European Capital of Culture, it started to change. So, yeah. We have a few seconds. Yeah.
I think doing these translations and investing in the multilingualism and giving access is not only linked, should not only be linked to a title year, but it should be the start of a what do you call it? It should be done afterwards on a regular basis. So it should be just part of a project, having it in different languages or presenting it in different languages. So I'm not judging it, but it was quite interesting to see.
Grazie a tutti.
Okay, thank you very much to everyone. Enjoy Trieste Film Festival and let's go 2025.